Starting on time, finishing on time. So important when public speaking, training, or facilitating. And one of the simplest ways to get an audience offside is by going overtime, by starting late, by not honouring their time. Good morning, everyone. Peter Dew's my name, public speaking trainer and coach. And today's webinar is on time management skills for public speaking. Effective use of your time every time you get before an audience to present a workshop, a training session, even a small conference speech. And you could apply some of this to meetings as well. Let's get started. So time management tips for public speaking. As a professional speaker, a conference speaker, I know the importance of honouring people's times and sticking to the agenda and sticking to time. But I see so many people disregard the importance of time. So I want to give you some simple tips to help you be more effective and have a greater understanding of how you can keep your session on time. Little bit of housekeeping, ask questions as we go. Don't wait for me to stop and pause. Type them into the chat box if you want to. Send an email to me after if something crops up that you don't think of during today's short session. Participate, comments, maybe you've experienced something that's gone pear-shaped regarding time management. Take notes and think and apply to yourself. What are you going to do to ensure that your time management is spot on for your audiences as you move forward? So the problems I see is the speaker has 30 minutes and they think they can speak for 30 minutes, but they hand over a long biography, a long introduction to their MC, and the MC goes through that, introduces them, a loud round of applause, and 5 minutes gone, and the speaker doesn't count that as their 30 minutes. The introduction by the MC, the chairperson, is part of your time. If you look at the agenda, there's not 30 minutes speaking, 5 minutes intro, it's 30 minutes, then the next speaker 30 minutes. So please allow time for the MC. And often you write your own bio, you write your own introduction. So if you're writing a 5-minute bio, that's 5 minutes of your time gone. I see speakers reach their time and they continue speaking. Look, I've just got another few things. I'll be as quick as I can. No, if your time is up, your time is up. In a Toastmasters club, a red sign will come up, a red light, and that's when you need to stop speaking because you're going over time. The other mistake I see, they go into the morning tea break or to the lunch break. So there is no other speaker after them and everyone's ready and primed for morning tea, which also is often the toilet breaks, morning tea, lunchtime. And the speaker decides, oh, look, we can shorten our morning tea. We can go from a 45-minute to a 30-minute lunch break. No, people have the agenda. They have in their mind that they're going to go to a break. The speaker goes into the next speaker's time. I really hate that. So you've got two speakers between 9 a.m. and 10 a.m. Then you've got morning tea. Speaker one speaks for 35 or 40 minutes. And the next speaker, their 30-minute slots reduced to 20 minutes, maybe 25 minutes. When you speak into the next speaker's time, you are stealing their time. And I, as a professional speaker, will honour my finish time and I'll reduce my 30 minutes by the time you've gone into my presentation down to 25 or 20 minutes. Which is kind of unfair to me or unfair to the next speaker. But rather than me go for my 30 minutes and then push into morning tea, lunch or the next speaker's time, I will cut my presentation short to bring the agenda back on time. And the last one really irks me. The speaker speaks for their first 30 minutes and then says, "So, have we got time for questions?" No, you don't have time for questions. If you want to have questions, then you finish early so that the Q&A takes place in your 30-minute or 45-minute slot. The good MC will say, "No, if there are any questions, please go and see the speaker in the break." But I see some speakers insist, "Come on, we've got time for a couple of questions." No, we don't. So this is the problem. So how do we manage this and make sure we are not the instigator or the perpetrator of one of these crimes against public speaking time management? Plan your content ahead of time. Make sure you know what you're going to present, what are the points that might take a little bit longer, and have a flexible structure. If the speaker does speak into your time before you, or if morning tea does come up a bit quicker than you expected, do you have a flexible structure that allows you to reduce the amount of time you need to get your message across? Let me share with you a little flexible structure that I use. So what I do is I am really clear on what my core message is. So that's the core message that runs through my entire presentation. I'm fairly clear of how I'm going to open. So you saw my opening this morning. I started fairly quickly around time management. So what's 30 seconds that you can open, sets the scene, and you can memorize. So that's that 30-second that will nail your ending. Sometimes it's a statistic, sometimes it's a quote, sometimes it's a quick story, but you've got that down pat. And I also have that 30-second conclusion. And that 30-second conclusion can be you nailing your ending. That can be your call to action. That can be your summary of what you've just said. Learn and memorize those and be clear of what that core message is. My writing will not be all that good with my mouse, so this is the core message. And that's the basic bones. I want people to walk out with this core message. It's relevant to them because of this. I'm going to start strong. It's going to grab attention, and I'm going to end strong with a call to action. That's my framework. Then in a normal presentation that I will structure, I will have maybe 3 key points, sometimes 4, but 3 is the magic number, that illustrate my core message. So the core message here is around time management. I guess point 1 is have flexible structure. And what I do is I use case studies, examples that I use to illustrate my key points. And these case studies, these examples, these anecdotes, these metaphors, these are your stories. And I'll just do a few different colours here to further illustrate a point. And these are called your bank of stories. Stories come from your experiences. They come from your working life. They come from your previous jobs, the clients you've worked with, the problems you've overcome. So this is your bank of stories. So I'll give that a label, and that's bank of stories. That is your bank of stories. So flexible structure enables you to reduce your time when you need to, and sometimes stretch. There are occasions when a speaker doesn't turn up before you, and the organizer will say, Peter, we'd love you to stretch, take your 30 minutes to 45 minutes. Are you able to do that and have the same impact? So flexible structure would be to shrink your time, expand your time. 30 seconds opening, 30-second conclusion remains the same. Yeah, that remains the same. Your core message, what you want people to walk away with, remains the same. The flexibility is in your bank of stories. So I can reduce the number of stories I illustrate per point. Now, with the different colours, I have a bank of stories that work with different audiences. So the red stories might be for the mining, the oil and gas, the resource sector that I work a lot with here in Western Australia. The blue stories might be for the health professionals, for the people that work in community services, disability services. And yesterday I worked with a group of people that worked in that space. And the green stories, the greenback money might be for the financial planners, the accountants, and the superannuation consultants I work with. So I've got a bank of stories that I can not only colour for a particular audience, but I can reduce or expand. So let's say I've got my 30-minute presentation. I've got my bank of stories organised, and I'm going to speak for 45 minutes. I'll probably do 3 stories per point. Someone speaks into my time and I don't have 30 minutes anymore, I will probably cross those out and just pick 2 stories per point. So the opening's the same, the closing's the same, core message is the same. I'm just using less evidence per point. The speaker doesn't come before me, Peter, can you stretch? So I'll now maybe give 4 anecdotes, 4 examples, 4 stories. So this palette, this smorgasbord, this buffet of all the stories for 1 point, I've got that flexibility to, whoa, I'm running out of time. Let's just do 2 points to illustrate what I want to say. Wow, I've got a little bit of time left over. Let's go to 4 points to illustrate that point. And I have a concertina that I can squeeze in and do really short, same impact. Yesterday was a 90-minute presentation. So I was able to give a couple of illustrations per point. My normal workshop is about 7 hours. That gives me time to give full details. And 3 weeks ago, I was speaking in Kuala Lumpur as a keynote speaker, as a conference speaker, and I only had 30 minutes. So I had to reduce the number of stories to illustrate the point. So that's my concertina, flexible structure that enables me to shrink or expand according to the time. Tip number 2, use a timer. No brainer. Some training rooms, there is no watch. Sometimes the screen you're looking at, if you're on a big stage, doesn't have a timer. Sometimes someone in the audience forgets to show you a flag, 5 minutes to go, 2 minutes to go. So I always have a timing app. I do wear a watch, but you don't want to be the person that keeps looking at their watch because that looks a little bit distracting. So I have a timer in front of me. So we're 14 minutes, 9:14 a.m., 14 minutes into this webinar. And this is sitting in front of me. It's just my mobile phone, which is on flight mode. So it doesn't ring, it doesn't ping. And this is what I put up on stage when I spoke in front of a large audience. This is what I used with the 90-minute presentation yesterday. This helps me keep on track. Use some other types of tips. Some of the PowerPoint clickers, you can load up time. You can load up 25 minutes on the clicker. and the clicker will vibrate in your hand when you've got 5 minutes to go. You determine when it will vibrate. There's one particular clicker that brings up a little timer on your computer screen, and that acts as a countdown timer as well. Find a timer that works for you, that's unobtrusive, that you can use without needing to look at your watch, or find a clock on the wall that may be a little bit distracting. If you want to keep on time, use a timer. Practice, 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 and practice your timing. What I find is that when I present, when I practice, the live presentation is often a little bit shorter. So this means if I practice, if I've got a 30-minute slot and I practice and I come in on 30 minutes, I'm worried about going a little bit over time, I'm probably going to finish 2 to 3 minutes early. In fact, my 30-minute presentation in Kuala Lumpur, I've got the video that I've reviewed, went for 26 minutes. Because there's those 1 or 2 things that I forget, that I don't include when I'm presenting at a conference. Practice, practice, know what your timing is, and be aware of where it's at. Learn to be concise. Learn to be concise. I've mentioned my one-day workshop, 7 hours. Yesterday was a 90-minute seminar and my 30-minute conference presentation in Kuala Lumpur. And one of the things about me is my uniqueness as a person who stutters and now does public speaking. And I share my story up front to let people know, and that adds to my credibility. It reveals my vulnerability, and it also helps illustrate my core message that public speaking is a skill that anyone can learn, regardless of nerves, regardless of fear, regardless of self-doubt, regardless of having a severe stutter. You can learn to be a good public speaker. When I do the 7-hour workshop, I can go quite deep into my story, the rejection, the humiliation, and the long and slow journey that got me to public speaking for my living. Yesterday, in the 90-minute seminar, I still shared my story, but I had to make it a little bit shorter, significantly shorter. And of course, in the 30-minute keynote, I still had to reveal my story, but I kept it really short because the presentation is not about me. And when I talk about my story and my journey, the focus of attention is on me. I want to highlight my story, but then turn the camera, the attention to the audience and get them thinking about what are you going to do to better manage your time? Which of your stories do you have polished, the long, the medium, the short version? That ability to be concise and illustrate the point you're trying to make, demonstrating the story, is really important. For example, when I'm talking about nerves and anxiety and fear being a normal part of public speaking, I talk about Sally Pearson. Sally Pearson, who won the 2012 London Olympics, and in the 110 metres hurdles, she was interviewed before the final, and she was asked, is she nervous? And she said, well, of course I'm nervous. If I'm not nervous, I'm not ready to race. And of course, the nerves put Sally Pearson into her peak performance mode. And this enables her to respond and go on and win the Olympic gold medal. I can talk a little bit more. That's the long version. The short version is Sally Pearson was interviewed before the Olympic gold medal race, which she won. And she was asked if she was nervous. She said, of course, if I'm not nervous, I would not be ready to race. If you're not nervous, you're not ready to speak. Nerves put you into your peak performance mode. So the ability to be concise in your story will help you manage your time. And tip number 5, as with the problem, the introduction that I started the presentation with, allocate time for your Q&A. Don't speak to your limit and then say, right, are there any questions? I would check in with the MC as well, how they're going to do questions. Do you want me to do a Q&A? With the conference presentation in Kuala Lumpur, there was no Q&A. So I just said, anyone that has any questions, feel free to have a chat with me after the break or during the break. And then I'd go back and then I'd nail my ending. Yesterday, the 90-minute session, I set rules up front. I said, so I've got 90 minutes. I've got time to take your questions as we go. If I say something that you're a little bit unsure of or is perplexing, then please let me know. And I got quite a few questions during that 90 minutes. My response had to be concise because I had to get back on task, back on topic. So allocate time for your Q&A. And if there is an introduction, if there is an MC, there was no MC yesterday, I introduced myself. In Kuala Lumpur, there was an MC, Masters of Ceremony, and they introduced me with a short bio that I provided them. And then there's time to walk up on the stage and the audience applause, and you've got to wait for the applause to die down before you start speaking. Factor that into your timing. Factor your introduction by the MC, and if you want a Q&A, then factor that into your timing. 30 minutes doesn't mean, 30 minutes with Q&A doesn't mean you speak for 30 minutes. It probably means you speak for 20 and allow 10 minutes for intro and Q&A. So there's some tips. I trust they were of value to you in keeping your session on time. Plan your content ahead of time. Have that flexible concertina structure. Do use a timer. It's really valuable. Practice, practice, practice. Not only for your content and for your confidence, it's going to hold you in really good stead, but it's going to give you an idea, wow, this is a 35-minute presentation that I'm trying to squeeze into 30 minutes. Something has to go. Then you can go back to your content. What can I leave out? Be concise, practice the story, the longer version, the shorter version, and that really concise version for a shorter presentation, or if you're running out of time. Allocate time for Q&A, allocate time if there is an introduction of you. What have I got coming up? Vocal quality. Not all of us, including me, was born with a radio quality voice. So what can we do to enhance our voice, our vocal quality, the intonation? I've got some tips that anyone can use that will raise the bar when it comes to your speaking voice. And one of the tips will always be, have water at your fingertips and don't be afraid to take a sip. The lubricating of your vocal apparatus with water will hold you in good stead. Workshops. Regional at the moment. Karatha, 28th of June, difficult conversations. Speaking off the cuff, 28th of July, Port Hedland. 27th of July, Port Hedland, winning presentation skills. Lots of corporate in-house workshops. I'm not doing many public speaking workshops. If you would find a public workshop of value to your organisation, let me know. I do have calendar dates available. Would love your feedback. Feel free to send me an email, any further questions, any comments. If you want to attend the next webinar, you can register online, and I would love to be of further assistance to you in your overall public speaking journey. But in terms of time management, plan your content. Do use a timer. Practice, practice, practice. Be concise and do allocate time for your Q&A. Ending 4 minutes early. This is Peter Dew, public speaking trainer and coach. What you've got to say matters. Make sure you share your message through public speaking.